It was an unusually quiet afternoon in the village, the kind of quiet where even the wind seemed to pause and the birds seemed to be holding their breath. Children played in the fields nearby, kicking up small clouds of dust while adults went about their work, tending to the animals and repairing fences. Life here had always been simple, predictable, and peaceful. Yet nobody could have guessed that today, the ordinary rhythm of the village would be shattered in a way that no one could ever forget. High above, the sky rippled with a strange, shimmering light. It didn't look like anything the villagers had ever seen before. Some swore it was a strange weather pattern. Others thought it might be a reflection of the sun on some kind of cloud. But then, the shimmering grew stronger, brighter, and a low, humming sound began to fill the air, vibrating through the ground, the trees, even through the villagers' very bones. It was not the sound of wind, nor the sound of animals. It was something else, something alive, and it was coming closer. Without warning, a massive shadow descended from the sky, blocking the sun and sending a sudden chill across the fields. The villagers stopped in their tracks, staring upward with a mixture of awe and fear. Slowly, a craft unlike anything on earth touched down on the outskirts of the village. It was enormous, sleek and silver, with surfaces that seemed to ripple and change color as if it were alive. Its landing sent small rocks skittering across the dirt and left a faint metallic smell in the air. From the craft emerged beings that no one could have imagined. They were tall, slender, and moved with a precision that made every motion seem both natural and calculated at the same time. Their eyes glowed faintly, and their voices when they spoke were soft but carried an unmistakable authority. But it wasn't the aliens themselves that caused the first wave of fear. It was what they brought with them. They moved slowly, carefully, as though the ground beneath them might shatter under the weight of what they carried. Between them was something massive, a creature so enormous that even the largest animals in the village seemed tiny in comparison. Its scales shimmered with a dark metallic sheen, and massive horns curved back from its skull like twin crescent moons. Its eyes were closed and it did not move, yet the sheer presence of the creature radiated power. The villagers instinctively stepped back, feeling as though the air had grown heavier just from being near it. Whispers spread quickly. "It's a dragon," someone said, their voice trembling. Another voice scoffed nervously. "That's not possible. Dragons are just stories." But the look on the aliens' faces told the truth. This was no story. This was real. The deadliest dragon the galaxy had ever known had come to their village, carried by beings who clearly feared it even in its lifeless state. Children shrank behind their parents, while adults froze, unsure whether to run or stay. Among them, one boy stood apart. He was small and wiry, with eyes that seemed far too wide for his face, curious and unafraid. While everyone else whispered and backed away, he watched the massive dragon with a fascination that the adults could not understand. There was no fear in him, just wonder. Something about the dragon called to him, and even from a distance he felt as though it could sense him too. The aliens placed the dragon carefully on the ground. It was so large that it took several of them to position it, and even then, the ground groaned under its weight. They moved as though every gesture mattered, and any mistake could provoke something terrible, even from a body that no longer breathed. They spoke among themselves in a language none of the villagers could understand, their words quick and urgent. But their tone carried something heavy. "Warning. Stay back," one of the taller aliens said, speaking in perfect but strange-sounding English. "This creature, even in death, is dangerous. No human should approach." The villagers obeyed, stepping back, but curiosity gnawed at them. What kind of creature could inspire this much fear? Even the aliens, who clearly wielded technology and power far beyond anything humans could imagine, moved around the dragon cautiously as though it might awaken at any moment. The boy, however, could not tear his eyes away. He inched forward slightly, drawn to the dragon by a force he could not explain. His heart pounded in his chest, but it wasn't fear. It was something else, something deep and instinctive. He felt a strange connection as though the dragon were calling to him. He did not notice the aliens watching him, tense and alert, ready to intervene if he came too close. As the sun shifted and shadows lengthened, the villagers began to whisper again. Some called out warnings, trying to pull the boy back, but he did not listen. He was mesmerized. Every scale, every curve of the dragon's massive body, every horn and talon seemed to tell a story of power, of battles fought across worlds, of lives taken, and victories won. And yet, despite its deadly reputation, there was something almost gentle in the way it rested now. The boy stepped closer, fascinated by the contrast between the creature's terrifying history and the quiet stillness of its present state. The aliens exchanged uneasy glances. This was unprecedented. No human had ever dared approach a dragon of this kind, not even in death. Their technology, their weapons, their knowledge, none of it could explain the audacity of this small human child. And yet here he was, stepping forward without hesitation, moving closer to a being that had been the nightmare of entire star systems. The boy reached out, hand trembling slightly, and paused just inches from the dragon's massive snout. The air seemed to hold its breath. Even the wind stopped. The villagers, the aliens, even the boy himself felt the tension in that moment. This was a creature that could have destroyed entire cities, yet it lay there, still and quiet. And the boy, small and fragile in comparison, seemed to hold no fear at all. Time seemed to stretch endlessly. The dragon, though lifeless, dominated the space, commanding attention simply by existing. And the boy, with his simple curiosity and unwavering courage, was drawn to it as if by some invisible thread. The aliens watched, unsure whether to intervene or simply allow the moment to unfold. In all their years, they had never seen a human act like this. They had never seen one approach a dragon, let alone the deadliest dragon known to their kind, with nothing but wonder and curiosity. And then, slowly, carefully, the boy reached out. Just a fingertip, barely touching the tip of the dragon's massive nose. A ripple of energy seemed to move through the air, not loud, not violent, but noticeable. The dragon remained still, yet somehow it felt as if it had acknowledged the boy. The alien's eyes widened in disbelief. Their whispers turned into stunned silence. For the first time, a human had made contact without fear, and nothing terrible had happened. For the villagers, it was both terrifying and mesmerizing. They had always believed dragons were dangerous, creatures that brought death and destruction. And yet here was a small human boy, standing calmly beside the deadliest one, touching it as if it were just another animal. The contrast was striking, and it left everyone wondering, could this boy possess something that none of them could understand? Something that even the aliens, with all their knowledge and experience, could not explain. The boy did not speak. He did not need to. His gaze was steady, and his hand lingered just for a moment longer. It was a simple, innocent gesture, but in that moment, the entire village and the aliens felt something shift. The fear, the tension, the expectation of disaster, it all seemed to fade, replaced by a quiet sense of awe. Even though the dragon's body lay still, the presence of this moment was alive. The boy had done something remarkable without realizing it, and as the sun began to dip lower on the horizon, casting long shadows across the field, the villagers and the aliens alike understood that they had witnessed something extraordinary, something that would be remembered far longer than the ordinary routines of life in their quiet village. The boy stepped back finally, eyes still on the dragon, heart still racing, not from fear, but from wonder. The aliens exchanged cautious glances, their previous urgency now mixed with confusion and a hint of admiration. And the villagers, slowly finding their voices again, could not stop talking about what they had just seen. They would tell the story again and again, each time wondering how a small human child could do what none of them or any alien had ever dared. That evening, the village settled back into its rhythm, but nothing would ever be the same. A dragon feared across galaxies had come to their land, and a little boy with nothing but curiosity and courage had approached it without fear. It was the beginning of something that no one could yet understand, a moment that would echo far beyond the quiet fields, far beyond the stars, and into the unknown future that awaited both humans and aliens alike. The moment the boy touched the dragon's nose, a ripple of astonishment ran through everyone present. The aliens, who had carried the creature with utmost care, froze. Their tall, slender frames stiffened, eyes wide with disbelief. They whispered to one another in their strange language, their voices quick and sharp, full of tension and urgency. Some moved closer to the dragon as if checking for danger, while others looked at the boy with a mixture of confusion and disbelief. The villagers, too, were in shock. Mothers pulled their children closer. Men shielded their eyes, and even the oldest villagers, who had seen countless strange events in their lifetime, could not find words. "How is he not afraid?" someone whispered. Another voice said, "That dragon, it could crush a whole village in one strike, yet he just touched it." Fear and awe battled in the air. The boy, however, remained calm. His small hand lingered just a moment longer on the dragon's nose before he slowly pulled it back. He looked up at the massive creature, his eyes wide but steady. There was no fear in them, only curiosity. For him, it was not a monster or a legend. It was something incredible, something that called to him in a way he could not explain. The alien stepped forward cautiously. One of the taller ones raised a hand as if to stop him, speaking in the same strange, commanding tone that everyone had already heard. "No further. You must not touch it again. It is unpredictable." The words were clear, but the tone carried a hint of uncertainty, almost as if they were not entirely sure what the dragon might do next. The boy didn't move. He only nodded slightly as if he understood, and took a small step back. The villagers murmured among themselves. They could not understand why the boy was not afraid. "He's just a child," someone said, shaking their head. "No child would survive if it woke up." But the boy's bravery, or perhaps his innocence, seemed to calm something unseen in the atmosphere. The dragon, still lifeless, lay quietly. Its scales reflected the sun, shimmering with colors the villagers had no names for. There was a strange calm in its presence, almost as if the boy's touch had acknowledged something ancient, something powerful, and somehow pacified it even in death. Despite the calm, a sense of caution lingered. The aliens began moving around the dragon, inspecting it carefully. One of them knelt beside the massive creature, scanning it with devices that hummed softly, sending beams of light over its scales. The readings were unlike anything they had ever recorded. They whispered to each other urgently, their voices low but full of tension. Something about the way the dragon reacted or did not react to the boy's touch was extraordinary. It was not supposed to happen. The boy watched quietly from a safe distance, fascinated. He did not speak, but his eyes followed every motion. He noticed the smallest details, the texture of the dragon's scales, the curve of its horns, even the faint glow from its closed eyes. To him, the dragon was not just a creature of fear. It was a story waiting to be understood. A creature that had lived across worlds, seen battles no human could imagine, and yet here it was, silent and still. Among the villagers, fear and curiosity battled for dominance. Some urged the boy to step away, warning him of danger. Others could not help but watch, feeling their own hearts race as they tried to imagine the power of the dragon. "It could awaken at any moment," one man whispered, voice shaking. "Even dead, it could crush him." But the boy remained calm, seemingly unaware of the danger, focused entirely on the dragon. The aliens, sensing the tension, decided to establish a perimeter. They moved around the dragon, creating a cautious barrier while keeping a close eye on the boy. They spoke to one another, their voices low, and the villagers could not understand the words, but the tone carried unmistakable caution. It was as if the aliens themselves were unsure how this human child could be unaffected by the presence of the deadliest dragon. As the sun continued to lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the fields, the aliens began to prepare the dragon's body for transport. They worked quickly but carefully, using tools and devices that made the dragon levitate slightly above the ground. The villagers watched in awe as the massive creature floated, its enormous wings folding gracefully against its sides. It was an incredible sight, almost impossible to comprehend, yet the boy continued to stand nearby, unafraid. The aliens paused for a moment, looking at the boy again. Their expressions were difficult to read, but there was a flicker of something unusual. Curiosity, perhaps, or even admiration. They whispered among themselves, their voices filled with disbelief. In all their years, they had never seen a human approach a dragon, let alone one of the deadliest kind, without fear. The boy's bravery, or perhaps his innocence, was challenging everything they had ever known. One of the aliens, taller and older than the others, stepped closer to the boy, lowering itself slightly so it was at his eye level. Its glowing eyes examined him carefully, and for a moment there was silence. The boy did not move or flinch. He looked back at the alien, his expression calm and steady. It was a small gesture, but it seemed to carry a silent message. He meant no harm, and he feared nothing. The alien tilted its head, as if trying to understand something beyond its knowledge. Then slowly it gestured toward the dragon, speaking again in its soft, commanding voice. The villagers listened closely, though they could not understand the words. The tone, however, was clear, a warning. The dragon, even in death, was not something to be treated lightly. The boy nodded slightly, understanding in his own way. He stepped back a few paces, giving the aliens space to continue their work. But he did not leave. He remained nearby, watching, curious and completely calm. There was something about him that even the aliens could not ignore. It was as if he possessed a presence or energy that resonated with the dragon, something beyond their understanding. As the preparations continued, the villagers began to whisper again. They spoke of the boy's courage, of the calm way he had faced the dragon. Some called it foolishness, but others saw it as something extraordinary. "He's not like the rest of us," one woman said quietly. "There's something different about him." The adults exchanged nervous glances, unsure whether to feel fear or pride. The boy, oblivious to the whispers, focused entirely on the dragon. He noticed every detail. The ridges along its scales, the faint scars that told stories of battles long past, even the way the sunlight made its horns gleam with strange colors. It was mesmerizing. He had never seen anything like it, and he knew he would never forget this moment. Finally, after what felt like hours, the aliens finished securing the dragon for transport. They hovered slightly above the ground, ready to take off, but paused once more to look at the boy. The taller alien, the one who had studied him so closely, stepped forward and spoke again in that calm, commanding tone. The boy understood the gesture. It was a warning, a sign of respect, and perhaps an acknowledgement of something he could not yet comprehend. The villagers watched silently as the aliens prepared to depart. The boy stepped back, giving the dragon space, but his eyes remained fixed on it. He felt a strange connection, something that went beyond fear or curiosity. It was as if he had touched not just the dragon, but a story, a memory, a life that spanned worlds. As the alien ship slowly lifted off, carrying the massive dragon away, the villagers could not stop talking. They whispered about the boy's bravery, about the calm way he had faced the deadliest creature they had ever seen. And somewhere deep inside, they all knew that this was only the beginning. Something extraordinary had happened today, and it would change the way they saw the world forever. The boy stood alone in the field for a moment longer, watching the sky where the alien ship had disappeared. The air was still heavy with the echoes of the dragon's presence, and for the first time, he felt a strange mixture of awe and wonder. He did not understand why the dragon had allowed him to touch it, or why the aliens had looked at him with such surprise. But he knew one thing. He had witnessed something remarkable, something that would stay with him for the rest of his life. And in that quiet village, under the fading sunlight, the first chapter of a story that would ripple across worlds had begun. The next morning, the village felt strangely different. The events of the previous day, the alien ship, the massive dragon, and the boy's daring touch still hung heavily in the air. Adults whispered quietly in corners, their faces showing both awe and lingering fear. Children, usually so carefree, seemed unusually quiet, their games interrupted by the memory of what they had witnessed. But the boy was different. He awoke early, his mind alive with questions, curiosity, and a strange excitement he couldn't explain. He remembered every detail from the previous day, the shimmering scales, the massive horns, the weight of the dragon even in death. He thought about the aliens, their strange, glowing eyes, and the way they had watched him with something that seemed almost like wonder. He could not understand why they had allowed him to approach, why the dragon had not reacted in fear or anger, but a part of him knew that something had changed between them. The boy slipped quietly out of his small home and ran toward the field where the dragon had been. The villagers had already gathered in small groups, talking nervously about the events. Some were hopeful that the aliens would return, while others feared what might happen if they did. The boy, however, had only one thought. He had to see the dragon again. Not for fear, not for bravery, but simply to understand. When he reached the field, he found it strangely quiet. The ground bore the marks of the dragon's massive weight and the alien machinery, but the massive creature itself was gone. The boy's heart sank slightly. He had wanted to see it again, to reach out once more, but it seemed as though it had vanished from the world, leaving only a memory behind. Suddenly, a low hum filled the air. The boy froze. He turned toward the sky and saw the alien ship descending again, slower this time, more deliberate. The villagers gasped and stepped back instinctively. The aliens emerged once more, their movements precise and careful. They carried something smaller this time, yet still massive compared to anything on Earth. A part of the dragon. It was one of its enormous claws, carefully contained within a protective field, glowing faintly with alien energy. The boy's curiosity drew him forward again. He could not help himself. He wanted to see it up close, to understand it. He took a cautious step closer, and this time one of the aliens noticed. Its glowing eyes fixed on him immediately, and it raised a hand in a clear warning. But the boy only paused and waited, keeping his gaze calm, his posture non-threatening. Something about his presence seemed to quiet even the alien, as if they were unsure whether to be alarmed or curious themselves. The alien slowly lowered its hand, and the boy realized that they were not hostile. They were studying him. Their movements were cautious but deliberate, and the boy could sense their focus, their curiosity. He didn't understand why they were so interested in him, but he did not feel afraid. Instead, he felt connected. Something about the boy's calm energy seemed to resonate with the alien technology, with the dragon itself, in a way that even the aliens could not fully explain. The villagers watched in stunned silence. They whispered among themselves, amazed that the boy was not only unafraid but seemed to have a kind of understanding, an instinctive calm that even the aliens could not comprehend. Some shook their heads in disbelief. "He's just a child," one elder said softly. "No child should be able to do what he does." But the boy remained focused, his eyes fixed on the claw, on the reminder of the dragon's immense power. As the alien set the claw carefully on the ground, a strange energy seemed to pulse from it. The boy stepped closer, instinctively reaching out. The aliens tensed immediately, their voices sharp and urgent. But nothing dangerous happened. The claw remained still, its energy calm, almost acknowledging the boy's presence. It was as if the dragon itself, even in part, recognized him. The boy knelt beside the claw, studying it closely. He noticed the intricate patterns along its surface, the subtle scars from battles fought long ago, the faint glow that pulsed with a rhythm he could not understand. Every detail fascinated him. He could feel the history of the dragon, its strength, its battles, and even in its silence, its wisdom. For the boy, it was more than just a piece of a creature. It was a story, a life, a force that transcended anything he had ever known. The aliens whispered among themselves again, their voices low but tense. They were confused, astonished, and perhaps even a little fearful. No human had ever interacted with one of their dragons in this way, and certainly not one of this boy's age. They observed every movement, every expression, every flicker of his curiosity, trying to understand what made him different, and slowly, almost reluctantly, they began to realize that this small human had something unique, something beyond fear, beyond logic, beyond anything they had encountered. The boy reached out and touched the claw lightly, just a fingertip against the smooth, glowing surface. A soft pulse ran through the air, almost like a heartbeat, and the boy felt a warmth, a gentle thrum that seemed to travel through him. He did not know what it meant, but he instinctively understood that he was connected in some small but important way to the dragon. The aliens watched in stunned silence, their glowing eyes wide. They had expected chaos, fear, even death, but instead there was calm, and something else, respect. The villagers whispered excitedly, some in awe, others in fear. They had never seen a human do something like this. Some began to wonder if the boy was special in ways they could not imagine. Perhaps he had a gift, or perhaps there was something about humans that even the aliens did not understand. Regardless, the energy in the field had shifted. What had been tension and fear yesterday had become something new today. A strange mix of curiosity, awe, and cautious hope. The aliens carefully lifted the claw back into containment, preparing to return to their ship. But before they left, the taller alien, the one who had studied the boy most closely, stepped forward. It lowered itself to the boy's level once more, its glowing eyes observing him carefully. The boy looked up, calm and steady, his hand still tingling slightly from the contact with the claw. The alien extended one of its long fingers toward him, a gesture that seemed almost like an invitation. The boy hesitated, then reached out. Their fingers brushed, and for a moment it felt as if the air itself held its breath. The alien seemed to study him in that single touch, as if trying to understand the energy within him. The boy did not flinch. He did not speak. He simply existed in that moment, calm, curious, and unafraid. And in that moment, the alien seemed to understand that this human child was unlike any other they had ever encountered. The alien withdrew its hand slowly, giving a subtle nod. Then, without a word, it gestured toward the ship. The boy watched as they carefully carried the claw back inside and began to ascend once more into the sky. The hum of the engines filled the air, vibrating softly through the ground. The villagers watched in awe as the alien ship disappeared into the sky, leaving only the memory of the dragon, the claw, and the boy's extraordinary courage. The boy stood alone for a long time after the ship vanished. The energy from the claw still lingered in his fingertips, a subtle reminder of the connection he had felt. He looked around at the villagers who were still whispering and shaking their heads in disbelief. He wanted to tell them that he had felt something incredible, but he knew they would not understand. This was something personal, something beyond words. That evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in shades of gold and red, the boy sat quietly in the field. He thought about the dragon, about the aliens, and about the strange pulsing energy that seemed to connect them all. He did not fully understand what had happened, but he knew that his life had changed forever. Something had shifted in the world around him, something invisible but undeniable. The villagers, though still in awe, began to return to their homes, whispering about what they had witnessed. But the boy stayed behind, alone in the quiet field, staring at the stars beginning to appear in the evening sky. He felt a sense of calm, a strange certainty, as if he had glimpsed a part of the universe that few humans ever could. He knew that this was only the beginning, that the dragon and the aliens were a part of something much larger, something far beyond their village. And as the night fell, with only the soft chirping of crickets and the distant glow of the stars, the boy realized that the connection he had felt with the dragon, with its claw and even with the aliens themselves, was something extraordinary, something that would guide him, protect him, and perhaps one day change the world. The next day in the village was quiet, but it felt different from before. The memory of the dragon, the alien ship, and the boy's bold touch still lingered like a shadow over the fields. Villagers whispered nervously to each other, afraid of what might happen if the aliens returned, yet curious about the boy who had approached the deadliest dragon without fear. No one understood what it meant, and most were too scared to even ask. The boy, however, felt no fear at all. He wandered through the fields where the dragon had been, his mind alive with questions. He could still feel the faint pulse from the claw he had touched the day before, a strange, warm energy that seemed to linger in his fingertips. He had no idea why, but he felt connected to the dragon in a way no one else could understand. It was as if part of the creature had reached out to him even from death. As he walked, he noticed something unusual. Small disturbances in the grass, faint shimmering patterns in the air, and a low hum that he had never heard before. It was subtle, almost like a whisper, but it made him pause. The village seemed ordinary to everyone else, but to him, it felt alive in a new way. Something had changed. He could feel it in the air, in the ground, in the faint tremor under his feet. Suddenly a shadow passed overhead. The alien ship had returned, moving slower this time. The villagers panicked, some running indoors, others gathering nervously in groups. The boy, however, stood his ground. He knew they had returned for a reason, and he wanted to see what it was. As the ship descended, the aliens emerged carrying more equipment and strange devices. Their glowing eyes scanned the surroundings carefully, and their long, precise movements showed caution and control. This time they did not bring the dragon or any part of it. Instead, they began setting up strange devices across the field. Lights flickered along the ground and soft hums filled the air as invisible energy seemed to pulse from the machines. The villagers whispered in awe and fear. They did not understand what the aliens were doing, and the boy, with his natural curiosity, stepped closer to observe. One of the taller aliens noticed him immediately. Its glowing eyes fixed on the boy, and its hand raised in a clear warning. But the boy, calm and steady, did not move back. Instead, he simply watched, studying the devices and the aliens' careful work. There was no fear in him, only wonder. Something inside him told him that he was meant to be here, that he had a role to play even if he did not yet understand what it was. The aliens whispered among themselves again, their voices low and urgent. They seemed confused, cautious, and even a little concerned. No human had ever approached so closely before, and certainly not one who showed no fear. Slowly they adjusted their behavior, keeping a close eye on the boy but not pushing him away. They were trying to understand him, trying to see what made him different. As the devices began to hum more strongly, a soft ripple passed through the field. The boy stepped forward, drawn to the energy, and suddenly the air around him seemed to respond. Grass shifted as if alive. Light sparkled faintly along the edges of the alien devices, and a subtle warmth ran through him. The aliens froze. Something unexpected was happening. The boy's presence seemed to interact with the energy of the machines, and perhaps with the lingering essence of the dragon itself. One of the aliens knelt to observe him more closely. It extended a finger toward the boy, not in threat but in careful measurement. The boy, without hesitation, reached out to meet the gesture. The moment their fingers almost touched, a pulse ran through the air, soft but undeniable. The energy from the devices reacted to him as if recognizing him, and even the aliens exchanged astonished glances. This human child, so small and unassuming, seemed to carry a presence that even they could not fully explain. The villagers whispered in amazement. Some were frightened, but many were captivated. They had never seen anything like this. A human child interacting with alien technology, with the lingering energy of a creature feared across galaxies. It was beyond their understanding. The boy, oblivious to their reactions, focused entirely on what was happening before him. He felt a strange connection, a pull toward the devices, toward the energy, toward something larger than himself. Suddenly, one of the alien devices glowed brighter, sending a pulse of light into the sky. The aliens immediately acted, adjusting controls and checking readings, but the boy felt no fear. Instead, he felt something warm, something familiar. It was as if the energy recognized him, as if the dragon itself had left a part of its strength within him. He reached out instinctively, and the light seemed to respond, pulsing in rhythm with the small, steady beat of his heart. The taller alien watched closely, moving slowly toward him. Its glowing eyes studied every motion, every reaction, every subtle change in his expression. There was a growing understanding in their gaze, a realization that this child was not just fearless but extraordinary. He was connected to the dragon, and perhaps, through the dragon, connected to something far greater than anyone had imagined. The boy did not speak, did not panic, did not even blink. He simply existed in that moment, calm and present, and in doing so, he caused a shift in the aliens' perception. They had always seen humans as fragile, unpredictable, and limited in understanding. But here was a human child, small and seemingly ordinary, interacting with forces they themselves had studied for centuries. It was impossible, yet it was happening. One of the villagers, braver than the rest, whispered, How can he do that?" Another shook their head. "I don't know, but he's not afraid." Their words carried awe, fear, and disbelief all at once. They could see it clearly. This was no ordinary child, and what was happening here was no ordinary event. The boy's focus remained on the devices. He could feel the energy around him, the pulse of power, the lingering essence of the dragon. Something inside him told him to reach out further, to understand, to connect. Slowly, cautiously, he extended both hands toward the devices. A soft hum filled the air, growing louder, more rhythmic, and the energy seemed to flow into him, wrapping around him like a gentle current. The aliens reacted immediately, their movements precise but cautious. They whispered urgent commands to each other, adjusting controls, monitoring every change. They had never seen a human interact with energy in this way. It was unprecedented, unpredictable, and yet beautiful. The boy felt a warmth spreading through his body, a calm, powerful sensation that was both strange and familiar. He realized that he could feel the dragon in a way he never had before, not as a dead creature but as a presence, a force, a story that stretched across worlds. The aliens watched in awe, and the villagers, though still frightened, began to understand that something incredible was unfolding before their eyes. For several minutes, the boy stood there, connected to the energy, to the dragon, and to the aliens' technology. The air around him shimmered softly, a faint glow that reflected in the wide eyes of everyone present. Then slowly he stepped back, lowering his hands. The energy subsided, the hum grew quiet, and the devices returned to their normal state. The aliens, stunned and silent for a moment, finally spoke among themselves. Their voices were low, cautious, filled with something that sounded almost like respect. The taller alien looked at the boy one last time, lowering itself slightly as if acknowledging what had just happened. The boy, still calm, simply nodded, understanding that he had done something extraordinary, even if he did not yet fully know what it was. The villagers watched in silence, their hearts pounding. They had witnessed something beyond belief. A human child, small and ordinary in appearance, had interacted with alien technology and energy in a way that defied explanation. And though they did not understand it, they knew one thing for certain: the boy was special, and what had happened today would not be forgotten. As the alien ship slowly lifted off once more, carrying the devices and leaving the village behind, the boy remained in the field. He felt a connection that went beyond fear, beyond curiosity, beyond understanding. It was a connection to something vast, powerful, and alive. A reminder that even the smallest human could touch the edges of worlds far beyond their own. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in colors the villagers had never seen before, the boy understood something deep inside him. His life had changed forever. He had stepped into a story far larger than his village, a story that included dragons, aliens, and energies beyond imagination, and he knew that this was only the beginning. The following morning, the village woke to an unusual stillness. The fields were quiet, and the usual sounds of birds and animals were muted, as if the world itself was holding its breath. News of the boy's strange connection to the dragon and the aliens had already spread among the villagers. Many whispered in hushed tones about what he had done, unable to comprehend it fully. Some were amazed, others frightened, but all felt that something extraordinary was unfolding. The boy, as always, was awake before anyone else. He slipped quietly out of his home, eager to be in the fields once more. The memories of the dragon, the alien ship, and the strange energy from the devices still lingered in his mind. He could feel it deep inside him, a gentle warmth pulsing in his chest, a reminder of the connection he had felt. He didn't understand it completely, but he knew it was real, and he knew it was important. When he reached the field, he saw signs that the aliens had returned during the night. Strange markings were etched into the soil. Faint glows pulsed from devices partially hidden among the grass, and small, almost invisible streams of energy ran across the ground. The air itself seemed different, heavier, charged with a presence he could feel but not yet describe. The boy stepped carefully, yet his movement seemed to harmonize with the energy, as if the ground itself acknowledged him. The aliens emerged from their ship again, moving with precision and care. Their glowing eyes scanned the field, then quickly focused on the boy. This time their reaction was more intense. They whispered urgently to each other, their voices carrying a tension that the villagers could sense but not understand. The boy, however, did not step back. He remained calm, his gaze steady, as though he understood something the aliens did not yet realize. One of the taller aliens approached him slowly, extending a hand. The boy hesitated only briefly before reaching out. As their fingers brushed, the energy around him reacted immediately. Light pulsed softly across the field. The devices hummed louder, and even the air seemed to ripple. The aliens exchanged astonished looks. They had expected chaos, perhaps even danger, but instead the boy's touch brought harmony. Something inside him resonated with the alien technology, with the lingering essence of the dragon in a way that was impossible to predict. The villagers watched in awe. They whispered quietly, amazed that a single human child could have such an effect. Some were frightened, fearing what might happen next. Others were mesmerized, unable to take their eyes off the boy and the subtle, extraordinary changes taking place around him. Every movement, every gesture he made seemed to influence the field, the devices, and even the aliens themselves. The boy knelt beside one of the devices, studying it closely. He reached out again, allowing his hand to hover just above its surface. This time the energy responded more strongly. Pulses of light traveled along the ground, and faint, almost musical vibrations filled the air. The aliens stepped back slightly, watching in disbelief. They had studied dragons, their energy, and their technology for centuries, yet they had never witnessed a human interact with it in such a way. One of the villagers, braver than the rest, whispered, "It's like he controls it." Others shook their heads. "No, he doesn't control it, he understands it," someone said, almost in awe. Even from a distance, the boy's calm presence seemed to radiate a force that influenced everything around him. Yet it was gentle, not violent. The taller alien stepped closer again, studying the boy's reaction. Its glowing eyes scanned him, searching for signs of intention, emotion, or danger. The boy looked up briefly, his eyes meeting the aliens. There was no fear, no threat, only curiosity. And in that brief moment, the alien seemed to recognize something profound. This human child was different. He was connected to the dragon's essence in a way that defied understanding, a bridge between species that was impossible to ignore. The boy extended both hands, letting the energy flow through him. The devices pulsed brighter, and the air shimmered with a faint glow. The aliens whispered urgently to each other, trying to understand what was happening while the villagers held their breath, watching the impossible unfold. The boy could feel the dragon's presence more clearly than ever before. A calm strength that coursed through him like a river. It was not frightening. It was powerful, wise, and reassuring. Suddenly, one of the devices emitted a brighter pulse than the rest. The light spread across the field, touching the grass, the soil, even the small stones scattered about. The boy instinctively reached out, and the energy seemed to respond to his touch, flowing through him and extending outward. The aliens, who had studied this technology for decades, stood in awe. No one had ever seen a human interact with it so naturally, so harmoniously. The boy felt a strange understanding within himself. It was as if the dragon had left a part of its essence in him, a connection that allowed him to sense the energy, to interact with it without fear or misunderstanding. He could feel the pulse of the field, the hum of the devices, the subtle threads that connected the dragon, the aliens, and the world around him. And though he was small, he felt powerful in a way that was quiet, gentle, and extraordinary. The taller alien stepped forward, lowering itself to the boy's level once more. Its glowing eyes studied him carefully. Then, slowly, it extended a long, precise finger toward the boy. The boy reached out instinctively, and their fingers brushed again. This time, the response was even stronger. The energy around them surged, rippling outward in waves. The villagers gasped, some stepping back in fear, others watching in awe. For several long moments, the boy and the alien remained connected, the energy flowing between them. It was a quiet, subtle force, yet undeniably powerful. The boy could feel the presence of the dragon within that energy, guiding him, supporting him, and connecting him to something far greater than himself. The aliens observed in stunned silence, realizing that this child was not ordinary. He carried a link to the dragon that none of their science, technology, or experience could explain. Finally, the boy stepped back, lowering his hands. The energy subsided slowly, leaving a calm, gentle glow in the field. The aliens whispered among themselves, their voices filled with a mixture of disbelief, awe, and something else. Respect. The taller alien gave a subtle nod, an acknowledgement of the boy's extraordinary abilities. The boy, still calm, simply watched, understanding that he had done something remarkable. Even if he did not yet know the full extent, the villagers, though still in awe, began to talk quietly among themselves. They realized that they had witnessed something beyond belief. A human child had not only touched a dragon, but he had interacted with alien technology, influenced energy fields, and connected with forces that no one could explain. It was unprecedented, impossible to fully understand, and yet it had happened. The aliens slowly began to pack up their devices, their glowing eyes still watching the boy carefully. They moved with caution, but there was no hostility. For the first time, they seemed to recognize the boy as more than just a human. They acknowledged him as a presence, a force, a being connected to something vast and extraordinary. The boy stepped back, giving them space, but his eyes remained on the field, on the energy, and on the invisible thread that connected him to the dragon and its lingering power. As the alien ship lifted off once more, the villagers could not stop whispering about what had happened. They had seen a human child achieve the impossible, interact with forces they could not understand, and remain calm in the presence of something far greater than themselves. And though they did not fully understand it, they knew one thing: the boy was special, and his connection to the dragon and the aliens would change the way the world saw both humans and dragons forever. The boy remained in the field long after the ship had disappeared, feeling the gentle pulse of energy beneath his feet. He understood in a quiet, instinctive way that this was only the beginning. There were mysteries to uncover, forces to understand, and a connection to the dragon that would guide him, protect him, and perhaps one day change the world. And as the sun set, casting golden light over the fields, the boy smiled softly to himself. He did not know what the future held, but he knew that he had already stepped into a story far larger than his village, a story that spanned worlds, creatures, and powers beyond imagination. He had touched the deadliest dragon, interacted with alien energy, and discovered something extraordinary about himself. And the world, though it did not yet understand, would never be the same again. The morning after the aliens left, the village felt different, quieter yet filled with a strange energy. The memory of the dragon, the boy's bold touch, and the alien technology lingered like a pulse beneath the earth. Villagers moved slowly, whispering to one another, still amazed and fearful. But the boy, as always, was awake before anyone else. He felt drawn to the field again, to the place where everything had begun, where he had first touched the dragon and discovered something extraordinary within himself. As he reached the field, the air felt alive. The faint traces of energy from the dragon and the aliens still shimmered in the grass, subtle but undeniable. The boy knelt down, running his hands over the ground, feeling the lingering warmth. It was quiet, gentle, but it spoke to him in a way words never could. He could feel the dragon's presence, not as something terrifying, but as something protective, wise and patient. The villagers began to gather slowly, drawn by the boy's actions. Some kept their distance, unsure if it was safe, while others were curious, wanting to see what he was doing. They had come to trust his instincts, though they could not understand them. They watched in silence as the boy moved carefully through the field, pausing to touch a patch of grass here, a stone there, as if he were communicating with the very earth itself. Suddenly, a soft hum filled the air. The boy froze and looked up. Far above, the alien ship had returned, moving silently and gracefully across the sky. The villagers gasped, and even those who had grown accustomed to the boy's calm found themselves holding their breath. The ship descended slowly, its lights glowing softly, not threateningly, but with unmistakable purpose. The aliens emerged, but this time there was no fear in their movements. They approached the boy cautiously, yet with respect, their glowing eyes fixed on him. They had seen what had happened before, the way he had interacted with their devices, with the dragon's essence, and they now understood that he was different. There was something within him that resonated with the dragon, with their technology, and with the energy of the world itself. One of the taller aliens knelt, lowering itself to meet the boy's gaze. It extended a hand, an invitation rather than a command. The boy stepped forward instinctively, and when their fingers met, a pulse of energy surged through the field. The villagers watched in awe as the air shimmered, faint light rippling across the grass and stones. The boy could feel it, the connection deep and undeniable, stronger than ever. This time, however, the boy understood more clearly. He felt the dragon, its spirit alive in a way that transcended death, guiding him, lending him strength. He felt the aliens, cautious yet curious, learning from him as much as he was learning from them. And he felt the village, the humans around him, their fear and wonder blending into a shared experience. It was a moment that connected worlds, creatures, and people in a way that seemed impossible, yet it was real. The taller alien extended its other hand toward the boy, signaling for him to reach out further. The boy hesitated only briefly, then stretched both hands toward the alien. The pulse of energy grew, filling the air with a soft glow. The villagers whispered, many with tears in their eyes. They had never imagined that a human child could bridge such worlds, could interact with the deadliest creature and the most advanced alien beings without fear, without misunderstanding. Then something extraordinary happened. The ground beneath the field shimmered, faint shapes forming in the grass. The dragon's essence, long thought gone, began to appear as a soft, glowing silhouette. It was faint but unmistakable, the massive wings, the sharp claws, the horns that had terrified so many. The villagers gasped, some falling to their knees in awe, while the boy stepped closer to the apparition, his hands raised gently, connecting with it. The dragon's spirit pulsed in rhythm with the boy's heartbeat. It did not roar, it did not move aggressively. It simply existed, alive in energy, calm and wise, acknowledging the boy's presence. The aliens stepped back, their glowing eyes wide with amazement. They had studied dragons for centuries, yet nothing like this had ever happened. A human child had bridged the gap between life and death, between species, between worlds. The boy reached out one final time, placing his hand near the dragon's nose, the same place he had touched it when it was alive. The dragon's essence pulsed, brighter this time, a warm glow spreading through the field. The villagers could feel it, a gentle vibration beneath their feet. A reminder that the dragon's power was not just strength, it was wisdom, protection, and connection. The taller alien spoke softly, its voice carrying over the hum of the energy. Though the villagers could not understand the words, the tone was clear, acknowledgement and respect. They were witnessing something sacred, something beyond their understanding yet undeniable. The boy, small and human, had achieved what none of them could, bridging worlds through curiosity, calmness, and courage. The dragon's spirit slowly began to fade, the glow dimming but not disappearing entirely. The boy stepped back, understanding that this was the end of one moment but the beginning of another. The connection remained, quiet but alive, a reminder that he carried part of the dragon with him within him. The villagers looked on, hearts full, realizing that they had seen a miracle, a story that would be remembered for generations. The aliens began to retreat to their ship, preparing to depart once more. Before leaving, the taller alien knelt again and extended a hand toward the boy, offering a gesture of farewell and respect. The boy reached out instinctively, their fingers brushing once more. The pulse of energy was softer now, gentle and reassuring, a final acknowledgement of the extraordinary bond that had formed. The villagers, though still in awe, began to speak among themselves quietly. They realized that the boy's courage, calmness, and curiosity had changed everything. He had touched a dragon feared across worlds, interacted with alien energy beyond comprehension, and done so without fear or harm. It was more than bravery, it was a quiet strength, an understanding of life and connection that no one could teach, yet he had shown it naturally. As the alien ship lifted off, disappearing into the sky, the boy stood alone in the field for a long moment. He felt the dragon's presence, the alien energy, and the pulse of the world around him. It was quiet, gentle, and beautiful. He understood that his life had changed forever. He was not just a boy in a small village. He was a bridge between worlds, a witness to forces beyond human understanding, and a keeper of a connection that would last far longer than anyone could imagine. The villagers slowly approached him, still cautious, still amazed. They whispered words of awe, of respect, of gratitude. They realized that they had been part of something incredible, something that would be told and retold for generations. And though they could not fully understand it, they knew that the boy had done something extraordinary, something that changed not only their lives but the balance of worlds they had never imagined. As the sun set, casting golden and orange light over the fields, the boy turned and walked back toward his home. He felt calm, stronger, and wiser than he had ever been. He had touched the deadliest dragon, bridged the gap between human and alien, and discovered a part of himself that was extraordinary. And though the future was uncertain, he knew that he had the courage, the curiosity, and the connection to face whatever might come next. And so, in the quiet village that had once been ordinary, the story ended, not with fear but with wonder, respect, and hope. The boy had become a symbol of courage, connection, and the extraordinary power of being human. And the dragon, though gone from the world in body, remained alive in spirit, guiding, protecting, and reminding the boy and the villagers of the beauty of courage, the strength of calm, and the power of connection that transcends worlds.